Yo, 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 I'm Candy. I be knitting, but today I be starting with spinning. I wanted to show y'all what I'm working on my drop spindles right now. And those are these. I've got a big old bowl here. It had a plant in it. Once the plant died, it became a yarn bowl. And yeah, fun fact, I can do the garden thing, but houseplants don't survive under me. But yeah, these are my drop spindles, and on here is some fiber. It is a braid of Navajo churro, and I took that and I used my hand cards and blended it with a braid from HipStrings, and this is the buoy base, and it was 4 ounces of 37% Blueface Luster, 37% Shetland wool, 25% Manx Lawton wool, and the colorway was Invincible. And I broke that up, and the braid had what you're seeing here is kind of like a wine, dusty, maroony color, and then it has a little bit of a yellowy green happening, and then it goes into some it's stuck together in the bag. It goes into some blues too, and so I broke up the colors, the reds and the blues that were in the braid, and then I blended each of those little nests of fiber, maybe 5 to 10 grams, with 5 to 10 grams of some gray Navajo churro. So the gray you're seeing in there kind of, I don't think you're seeing the color gray, but it kind of dulls these colors and made it a little bit more earthy. And I'm spinning that on my drop spindles. And actually, rewind, I put those on my hand carders and I made rolags, and then I'm spinning the rolags onto my drop spindles. And the plan here is to do a little 2-ply. I did sample it at first on my wheel and did a little 2-ply on my wheel, and then decided that I would rather spin it on my drop spindles. Just because I'm really liking long draw on the drop spindle, long draw with the rolags, because it's like, you know, the rolags are like just the perfect size to get a little bit going. But this is what I spun up on my wheel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make ply bracelets. I am going to ply it on my wheel. And I'm thinking of, I mentioned wanting to do the Ooey Gooey by Andrea Mallory. For some reason, I'm like, is that her name? Drea Renee Knits. That I do know that for sure. But I have this kind of blue color that's coming out, and this kind of red color that's coming out, so I don't know which one would be like the color work per se, or, you know, I'm sure, you know, with the welts in it and the different motifs in there, I could probably do 2 different colors, and then obviously I would need a main color for the body. So that's that. The next thing I want to show you is something I'm knitting with my hand spun. As I mentioned last time, my husband has become quite enamored with things made from hand spun yarn, and it is still technically fall here, but it's definitely getting colder, and we like to take little walks. And he was complaining that I just dropped a stitch, by the way. Let me fix this stitch. His nose gets cold on these walks, so he has a full beard, and he does own a scarf, but he was saying he wants something to kind of pull up over his face to keep his nose warm when it is colder outside. And so with that, I cast on a cowl, and this is the Oats cowl by Tin Can Knits, and so this is a part of the, I guess, the grain family. They have the rye, the flax, this is the oat. And so what it is, it's a tube, and you can either do a long tube that you can wrap around like an infinity scarf, or you can just do what they call the smaller one, but it has this panel of stockinette, or not stockinette, a panel of garter stitches, and then the rest of it is stockinette, and it just adds a little bit more interest while I'm knitting. I don't always feel like just knitting stockinette endlessly in a tube, so this just adds a little bit of visual interest. And this yarn is some Coopworth that I spun up. This was a fleece that I got from Shenandoah Valley Fiber Fest. And this is probably about halfway done. And I got this much left in the ball. And I have 2 more skeins of this. So I have more than enough to finish this project. And just a real light, fluffy yarn. It is a bit more on the toothy side, but he does not mind that at all, especially when it's cold out. I don't even notice what some people might call an itchy wool once I'm out in the cold. I probably could have done better with plying this a little bit tighter. Like I noticed it's a bit splitty and it's not as tightly plied, but it's going to be nice for keeping warm. And it certainly is yarn that you can knit with, so it's not like falling apart or anything, but I can definitely see places where it seems to need a lot of twist. I don't know if that's normal for Coopworth or just user error, and it might be because I spun it from bats, and so I spun it woolen. And so maybe I just need a little bit more twist the opposite way to keep it together, because it is very fluffy. I don't know. I'll have to think through that. So that's that. And so very soon he'll have this. And I'm also knitting out of my newest yarn bowl. I'm not sure how practical it's going to be because it is a little rough around the edges, but it was made by an elementary school student. So pretty impressive. This is, my daughter made this. It's clay, and it looks like she pressed a leaf down there, so you can see all the veins of the leaf if you were up close to it. And then she said they set it on top of a bowl, and so it turned into a bowl like this, but it has the imprint of a leaf inside. And it is the perfect size for just like one little skein of yarn, and I love it. And it has like little slits on the side. That's where I'm thinking maybe I'll add some more glaze or some paint from around the house or something, because it does have a few little rough edges where the yarn gets caught. But I do love this a lot. As soon as she brought it home, I was like, can I have this? And can I put yarn in it? And she luckily obliged me. So I just wanted to show that off and put that with that project. I'll put it over here. And I'm just working on that while we watch TV. And probably a couple of more nights of, what are we watching right now? Whatever TV show we're watching, a few episodes of that a night. It's, yeah, probably 2 more nights and I'll be done with that and binding that off, and he'll have something to pull over his face while we're walking. So the next project I want to show y'all, I was going to show y'all what's in my Pine Bear Knits bag, but since we're talking about hand spun, let's go to my next hand spun project. I am thinking a lot about, like, because we're coming up on the end of the year, like reflecting back on this year, what were my goals? And one of my goals is always to knit more with hand spun, and I just feel like it's kind of naturally happened this year, because it's like I'm starting to get certain, quantities of yarn, starting to get a certain amount of confidence with my yarn. A lot of my long-term planning is starting to pay off, so it's like kind of cool that I didn't have to like force myself with that goal. It's just kind of naturally happening, because I remember last year being like, okay, I always need to have at least one hand spun project on the needles, and I was always kind of like struggling to think of something. But now it's just like I just go to my yarn room and I go pick out yarn, and sometimes it's hand spun, sometimes it's commercial yarn. And so this is I call this my yarn gym bag, because it looks like a gym bag. And inside this gym bag, speaking of looking back on goals, this is actually my white whale project. This is the Trista by Steingass. Not the Trista. I made the Trista already. This is the Vintersol by Steingass. And this is all hand spun. And so I have it inside out, and I have to make a mental note to remind you of why it's inside out. But this is right side out. And this is what I got so far. Does not look like much, but I promise you this is a sweater. And the orangey color is a rust color from RH Lindsay. There's some of their like dyed comb top. The brown is some more of that taupe from RH Lindsay that I used in my husband's sweater. I had a ball left over. We'll get to that too. And so I started using it in here. And then this white gray color, let me get the ball of yarn. I'm almost out of yarn, is some other hand spun that's in my husband's sweater. So my husband's sweater is all brown, and it's some of this brown yarn. It's kind of got like some gray in it. But I told y'all the story about how I bought a 9-pound fleece from Maryland Sheep and Wool as my first fleece, not knowing what I was doing. And now you're going to get a little bit more idea why. It's because this white and this brownish gray came from the same sheep. It was the same fleece. So I went there with the intention of buying a multicolored fleece, and that's how I ended up with the 9-pound Lincoln Cross. And so I could not pass it up, and no regrets, 0 regrets. And so I got it home and I separated it by color. Some of it I blended to experiment with it, but for the most part, I really wanted a multicolored fleece. So this is that Lincoln Cross. This is more of that Lincoln Cross. Still that OG, very thick and thin yarn, very much packed with lanolin. And then, let me see if I can find, this is that, let's do this. This is that comb top from RH Lindsay. And so this is the Vintersol, and this is the sweater that I fell in love with after, well, I just became enamored with it because it was on Call the Midwife, and I had just started knitting, and I was just like, I can tell that's a hand knit sweater. And I was just like, oh wow, I'm getting to the point where I can tell it's a hand knit sweater. Not only can I tell it's a hand knit sweater, it looks very familiar. And so I quickly found that it was a Steingass pattern, the Vintersol. And Cyril, the character Cyril, wears it on the show, and his is bright orange, and I chose this more rusty orange color, but he has the white and the brown in his yoke. And so in that moment, I was just like, oh, that'd be cool if I could knit that one day, but I'll never be able to knit anything like that. And look at me now, Ma. If y'all remember, I've made the Trista by Jennifer Steingass, and I made that pattern with the intention of being like, okay, I want to make this, I want to make it, I'm just dropping all kinds of stitches today. I made that pattern with the intention of being like, okay, I've never made a colorwork sweater before. I've never knit a Steingass pattern before, so let me get some practice before I jump into what is like bucket list knitting. And so I made that pattern, and I was like, that was fun, that was easy, I've got this. And so I started this pattern, and this pattern is a little different, just a little bit different. And while we're here, I do want to show you my swatch really quick, because I feel like with the these patterns, you kind of want to see a little bit more of the motif, because this is just scrunched up on my needles right now. So yeah, I did swatch so you can kind of see better the rusty color, and then the taupey gray brown, and some of that creamy white. But anyway, so I started this pattern, and first things first, we talked last time about bottom-up sweaters versus top-down sweaters, and that's, up until this point, that's the only type of sweaters I've ever done. This sweater is a little bit different because what you're seeing here is the bottom of the yoke. So you cast on provisionally for the yoke, you knit all the way up, finish the yoke, then you undo the provisional cast on and separate for sleeves in the body. So then you're knitting down. So half of it is bottom up, half of it is top down. Okay, that's fine. I guess. I did do a new method to me that's in the pattern. It's called the cow yak method. It's cast on with another yarn. So basically you pretend you're knitting the sweater, but instead of casting on with your actual yarn, you cast on with a totally different yarn with the intention that you're going to cut this out and then put this back on stitches. I've only ever done provisional cast-ons with a crochet chain, but I'm always open to new techniques, and if a pattern specifies a certain technique, especially for something that's outside of my wheelhouse. I've never knit a yoke up from the bottom up before. I was like, let me do it the way it is prescribed in the pattern. And the way it was explained is that one, sometimes stitches can get off by like just one stitch count, which isn't a big deal, you know, when you do a provisional cast on, because a knit stitch is a V, and so there's two parts to every knit stitch, and so depending on what direction you're knitting in, you might be missing a half of a V and you have to just cast on an extra stitch. The other thing is allegedly this method makes the tension a little bit more even and makes it less obvious that you're knitting in the opposite direction. And it also assures that all of your stitches are situated the correct way so you don't end up twisting stitches. That was the explanation that was given to me. We'll see if I see a discernible difference between this and the crochet chain method. Because I've had issues where I've had to undo a cast on and then knit again. So I have had projects where I'm knitting in two opposite directions before, and I've never been able to notice it before. But this is a very large colorwork sweater, and the line of demarcation is going to be across my torso. So I'm gonna follow the instructions and do it. I do know some people, you know, this debate of top down versus bottom up. I like it. I think a pro of it is going to be that once I'm done with this yoke, I can just block the yoke and I can get a much better idea, especially with a circular yoke. Sometimes fit can be hard when you're knitting top down and you're just like kind of pinching it. It's like, okay, where are the sleeves going to be at? But this way, once I block it and then I separate for sleeves and body, I'm going to have, I'll be much closer to the finished project. So I think that's a good idea. And then all of the tough work will kind of be out of the way. There's a little bit of color work around the cuff and the bottom of the sweater, but the bones are in the yoke. So if the yoke isn't looking good, then why make the rest of the sweater? The other reason some people like bottom up is that they believe the decreases look a little bit neater than increases. And I'd have to agree with that once we get into this next project I want to show you. The third thing is something I don't know if I agree with. A lot of people like the idea of casting on this yoke first. And I've seen this in sweaters and in shawls. This is the point of the sweater that has the most stitches on it. So from here, it's only decreasing. And then once you pick up, you're doing a little sleeve at a time, body at a time. So this is the point in the sweater where you have the most stitches. And a lot of times when people are doing bottom or top down, you can get to that point where you're increasing, and you have a lot of stitches, and it can be demoralizing for some people. And so some people say, oh, if you knit it like this, then you get all of that out of the way. Or if you're doing like a shawl and you cast on the entire width of the shawl and then you're just decreasing from there, you get kind of like the bad part out of the way. I think I disagree. We'll see how I feel when the whole sweater is done, but I love like a shawl where you cast on a garter tab. You have like 3 to 5 stitches and you're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because yes, towards the end it becomes a slog, but I love getting that momentum at the beginning of the project where it's getting much bigger, much longer, faster. And so that gives me the momentum to kind of keep going on the project. And so I don't mind that. And then when I get to the sloggy part, or the part where I have all these stitches going, it's much easier for me to see. I can see the end in sight. So it's just like, okay, yes, these rows are really long, but I'm almost there. With this, it's been a bit of a struggle to pick this up, especially with color work and so many stitches, and kind of like I swatched, but I'm also like, I don't know. I started using this yarn from my husband's last sweater, and I don't have this much yarn left. And so I'm just like, oh, you know, when am I going to run out of yarn? What am I going to do when I run out of yarn? Yada, yada, yada. I found a mistake in one of the rows, so I had to go back to the last row. The other thing is the difference between this sweater and the Tresta is they're both 3-color color work, which I'm finding I'm not a fan of. I think I'm gonna stick to 2 colors at a time. Like, I don't mind multiple colors being in the project, but working with more than 2 at a time, I don't want to do. And catching floats while I'm working with 3 colors of yarn. There's points in here where there's some of these motifs are 8 stitches wide. And so I'm definitely catching my floats. And anytime I have to pause while I'm knitting is not a good time for me. And I have so many stitches. I am at the point where I am decreasing, and so it's getting a little bit better. I'm decreasing and I'm working with 2 colors, so that's great. The other thing I wanted to note about the color work, the reason that it was inside out, is when I'm knitting in the round, I have a tendency to, I'll cast on, and then next thing you know, the whole thing is flipped inside out. And it doesn't change the direction of the stitches. It's not like I'm twisting my stitches or tangling up my project, but it just naturally flips that way. And I never really thought much of it, but a friend of mine sent me an Instagram reel, and the reel was saying that when your yarn or when your project flips inside out like this, you're actually creating more space between the stitches. And so this is, this reel, they were actually recommending to knit your color work inside out like this. And so rather than, if the project was inside out, I would have the row facing me and I would be working the stitch closest to me. If it's inside out, the stitch I'm working is further away from me, and I'm spreading the stitches out more on the needle, and it's actually creating a looser tension. And so they were recommending, if your color work is too tight, to knit it inside out like this. And so I'm trying that, and I just never, it's just something, I love that idea of like, but why? Or how does that work? Because it's something that happens when I'm knitting, and I'm like, I just don't think anything of it. I was like, oh, maybe my tension has changed. So I need to be more mindful if I don't want my tension to be looser, that means I need to make sure my project is facing the way I want it to face. But it's interesting to think about cause and effect and how those things work. I'm just gonna knit this drop stitch right quick. So that was interesting to me. And also last time when I knit the Tresta, I went up a needle size for my color work, and it worked well for the stitch gauge, but because I went up a needle size, my row gauge got that much longer, and I didn't necessarily want that, so that yoke actually came out a bit deeper than I was intending to. And so I'm actually sticking to the needles that are prescribed in the project that I'm getting the correct gauge with, and then trying that idea of stretching out the stitches a little bit more by knitting this way, to kind of compensate for that, because it's all well and good to get enough stretch this way, but I don't want it to be, the stitches to be too long this way. And I think that happens when I'm, particularly when I'm knitting continental, I create a lot of slack and I pull up the yarn. And so I think I'm getting more than enough, or I'm getting less tension there, which is what I want. So that's that. So as I said, I don't think I have enough of this. I do have more of this yarn that I used in my husband's sweater that I might sub in. It is a little bit thicker, and also I like the idea of doing like a really warm brown. So the other option I have is this, which is not hand spun yarn, but it is farm yarn. When I went to that, I went to a yarn show. Actually, it was a craft show at a local farm, and a local sheep herder got their yarn milled. And so this is Virginia Merino, not Merino, is it Merino? What is the, yeah, it's a Merino cross. And it's very soft, but it's more of a warm brown. It has less of the, has more of the gray in it. And so I just needed to decide. I think I might use this just for like cuffs and finishing, because it is commercially processed. It was mill processed, and just to give myself some more professional looking finishing on the edges. But then also, this brown is supposed to be the cuffs, but I saw someone's project on Ravelry where their contrast color too was the cuff. So they did white for their cuffs and for their, like their ribbing. And I kind of like that too, but I have to kind of decide what is more important, having a sweater that I think looks great, which yes, that's important, or something that more closely matches Cyril's sweater from Call the Midwife, because I've been basically inspired by that sweater. I've already changed the bright orange to a more of a rusty orange, so I don't think it's that big of a deal to switch up the ribbing, because I think in the long run it's more important to have something that I want to wear rather than emulating a certain character. And I'll always know that it's my Cyril sweater, but that's that. So you'll be seeing more of this slowly but surely. The main thing I've been working on this week has been a bit of a, what do you call it? I guess a compulsive cast on. I had finished my husband's sweater. I had started that colorwork sweater, and it was knitting was starting to feel a little bit more like a job again, like a lot of math, a lot of measurements, a lot of exacting, like, oh, I gotta put this color here, and I gotta match this, and I gotta gauge swatch, da-da-da. And so I was just like, okay, I need something that is candy bee. Like, let's get back to what I'm about. And so I cast on this. And you can tell that this is very me. This is the, I've got lots of balls connected. So this is the See My Vest Worsted by Emily Bolduan, aka Maker. And this is a free Ravelry pattern for a slip over, tank top, vest, whatever you would call it in your country of origin. And she has a striped version. I did a striped version, but my striped version is a little bit different. She did 10 rows wide for stripes. I did 12 rows wide for stripes. And all of this yarn, and this is how I decided on this project, I always tell y'all about going to yarn swaps, and I went to a yarn swap, and someone had a bunch of small balls of what appears to be superwash DK weight yarn. And so this is my Pine Barren Knits quilted bag, and inside this bag is one of those little clear shoe boxes, photo boxes, whatever you call them. And so when I got that yarn, I put it all in this box. And so I just went up to my craft room and grabbed the box, and I was just like, okay, we're making something out of this. And then that's how I decided on the sweater. And at first I was going to hold it double to get a worsted weight, but the tension was, it was like really thick and really tight, and I just knew I was going to run out of yarn. So the pattern is called the See My Vest Worsted, but this is all DK weight yarn on size 7 needles. And so I grabbed all the little balls of DK weight yarn, and then I have whole balls of, this is Queen's Yarn Boutique on her Delirious DK 100% superwash merino in the color High Voltage. This appley green is Vivacious DK by Fiberspates, which I think is discontinued. And then I have this navy blue color, or royal blue color. No, I'll call it more navy. This is 29 Bridges, and this is like, I think this is the first ball of 29 Bridges I ever bought where I fell in love with 29 Bridges. 29 Bridges is one of my favorite dyers because they just do very deep, beautiful colors. And this is 29 Bridges, Merino DK. The colorway is bright blue. And so I grabbed those 3 full skeins and I striped them in with the partial skeins. They were about 22, 24 gram balls. I don't know if someone had a advent or something they wanted to get rid of, or it came out of a project. And I am here. I am almost done. I will not do a project deep dive on this because I literally was just grabbing balls and randomly putting the colors. I definitely would have done the colors differently had I planned out this project, but that wasn't the point. The point was to kind of relax my brain and just get back to just knitting for fun. I am at the end. I'm doing the split hem option, and I'm doing the split hem in this this bright blue color. And after I do that, I have just a few ends to weave in because I wove in as I went, but I am going to redo the top. I did the ribbing each in a different color, which I really like. That's not the issue. The issue is, and I might change my mind, that's why I'm going to do the bottom first, but this dark green color is just a little bit thicker than this greeny blue color and this yellow color. So I think what I'm going to do is undo this ribbing and switch it with this ribbing so it just looks proportionately similar. But also I might bind off the bottom and not really care because I really honestly can't be bothered. But we'll see. I'll look at this video, and if it looks crazy on video, then I'll change it. But yeah, but you can tell it's just a little bit thicker. And yeah, I don't even think I'm gonna block it because we're in like the swing of the holiday season and we have some visiting to do. And so I really kind of want this to be able to wear this to do our holiday visiting. My Christmases are all about just bright, wild colors. The idea of having like a sleeveless top to wear indoors so I'm not overheating, and it's super festive. And yeah, I've been just wanting a vest for a very long time and finally just sat down and did it. And on top of that, my other favorite sweater to wear is my simple sweater by Tin Can Knits that's all striped. And that's like the sweater I get the most comments on. Everyone's just like, even like from knitters, non-knitters, they're just like, oh, I love your sweater. And so the idea that I have like a sleeveless version I can wear of that and wear it around is very alluring to me. Yeah, I'm leaning towards picking this out, but I'm gonna finish the bottom first because I have a lot of needles clinging around on this, so I'll get that done. And then last thing I want to show y'all is not knitting, not spinning. It's kind of weaving, but I don't want y'all to get too excited. It's this. I got this as a Christmas gift for myself 2 years ago, so not last Christmas, the Christmas before. And it is just a little loom from Twines and Lines. And I was just like, oh, I can make a little ornament for my tree, and I can have a knit fiber related ornament on my Christmas tree. And my intention was to do it over the Christmas break. And by the time Christmas break rolled around, I did not feel like doing it. And then next thing you know, Christmas is over and I don't feel like doing Christmas things after Christmas. And so long story short, this is set for 2 years. And so accountability buddy, I'm going to do this year, and this will be on my tree this year. I got this from Twines and Lines, but I did look at a tutorial from Spruce and Linen, and I'll link both of them below because they do a lot of arts and crafts, like non-traditional looms. I'll show you the video in particular I watched because it was about looms that are not rectangular shaped. And so I learned some techniques for this, and the thing, I was looking at like some hand spun, I was looking at some bulky yarn, but in this particular video, they actually use roving to weave with. And I think that's going to be a really good idea because it's like, you know, you see how wide the warp is. You see how spaced out that warp is, so you really need something thick to fill that in. And so what I've done is I pulled out some of this. This is some of that that acrylic roving that a lot of big box stores sell for knitting. Like it's like an extra bulky yarn for knitting, but it's just loose acrylic roving, and you can kind of pull it apart. So I have some of this, and it's not terribly big, and it's not going to take me long. And then I also have some mill-ins of some mystery fibers that I can tuck into there. I might mix, I think the yellow, we'll bring out the yellows in here, and I'm just gonna set it down for a couple of hours before Christmas gets here, and I'm gonna make this, and hopefully next time I see y'all, I can show this to y'all. So I just wanted to show that to y'all just to keep it in the top of my brain. Also, I have this really nice crafting table back there, so it'll be nice to use the crafting table for something besides a catch-all for throwing my crap on top of it. So that is that. If you like this video, like this video. If you want to share this video, share this video. If you want to know when I post, hit the bell. It'll notify you when I post. If you want to talk to me, please do so in the comments. If you have a comment, comment. Everything's very self-explanatory on the internet. If you want to email me, you can do that, candibknittin@gmail.com. If you want to see progress of these projects, follow me on Instagram. I am candibknittin on Instagram. I am candibknittin on Ravelry. Until the next time, peace.